morning, Lionhearts. It's your old pal Jordan the Lion. How you all doing today? Great! I am in a great mood. I think this is going to be a great day because I just heard that very recently they laid BURT Reynolds to rest. After 2.5 years of his passing, they finally gave him a home, or an eternal resting place, at Hollywood Forever Cemetery, and they did put down a headstone, although I did hear that they're doing they've commissioned a bust that around the 3-year anniversary of his death they're going to unveil. So I want to go visit him today, talk about his extraordinary life, and go see this temporary headstone. Daze with Jordan the Lion, you all, and the great star of Smokey and the Bandit, BURT Reynolds. It begins right now. All right, we're rolling into Hollywood now. I've never noticed this statue before. I wonder if the one of BURT Reynolds will look anything like this. Except of him. I mean, the guy's smoking a pipe and everything. So apparently BURT is laid to rest over near the pond. Now actually at the time of filming this, he was just laid to rest yesterday. I'm not exactly sure where he's buried around here, but we'll find him. From what I saw online, he's pretty close to Tyrone Power. Tyrone Power is over here. So it's actually a little further than Tyrone Power. Tyrone Power is right over here. And here's BURT's final resting place. Man we knew with the mustache, the charisma, and he almost wasn't an actor. He, growing up, was a football star. He grew up in a pretty strict household. His dad was the police chief, his mom was a nurse, and BURT was a heartthrob football star when he was in high school, and went on to play at Florida State, was a star there until he had a car accident that hurt his knee and finished up his football career. So he ended up enrolling in drama and found a new home on the stage. Ended up winning a Florida State drama competition and then got an internship in New York. And shortly upon arriving in New York, Joanne Woodward discovered him and got him an agent, and he was off and running. He would do bit parts in TV shows and movies. He would play Indians. He would do a little bit of everything, and people started noticing he looked a lot like Marlon Brando. And the guy ended up becoming, at one point, the biggest box office star in the world. He commanded the highest salary for 5 years. He was the top box office star. He had all the women. I mean, he had such an amazing career. We know him from Deliverance and Boogie Nights, Smokey and the Bandit, Cannonball Run. But it's kind of amazing if you hear all the things that they wanted him to play, all the parts they wanted, and he turned down. Like, he was offered James Bond in 1969, but he thought that an American couldn't really play James Bond, so he passed that up. He said that's one of his big regrets, is that he does wish he would have done that role. He also passed up John McClane in Die Hard. He passed up Michael Corleone in The Godfather, and he said the reason that was is because he was a huge fan of Marlon Brando, and Marlon Brando said that if BURT Reynolds played Michael Corleone, he would not play Don Corleone. They say that there was a lack of respect on Marlon's part, but I think partially it's because BURT was such a big name, probably a little bit of envy there, because BURT was the new heartthrob, and also because, you know, people said that BURT looked a lot like Marlon. He also passed up on Jack Nicholson's part in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, as well as Terms of Endearment, and also Luke Skywalker. He said that if he could do it over, he would have done Terms of Endearment because the part was written for him, but he did say Jack Nicholson was the greatest actor of that generation and that there was no one that, you know, could replace him. But he does say, I wish I would have done those kinds of things. Now, he had the biggest salary at one time, which also meant he was spending lavishly. He lived like a king. He had 6 or 7 estates. He had his own jet. He had boats. He had it all. And he was spending tons and tons of it. And apparently his assistants and stuff just kept away from him how much he was spending till he was in trouble. And it's pretty sad, because for a guy who had it all, he could pick who was his leading lady. In fact, Sally Field said she was shocked when he picked her to be in Smokey and the Bandit, because she said she hadn't really starred in many movies or anything like that at the time. And then she said when she came to set, they said, you know, Burt wants to meet you. And she said from the moment they set eyes on each other, there was just something there, like something indescribable. And she said they both felt it, and it was lifelong lasting. And she said when she asked him, why did you want me for this movie? He said, I loved you in Gidget. And she just couldn't believe it. In fact, he said, heartbreakingly, that she was the one that got away. Really, he said he thought that she was the one that he could have eternally been happy with. And he just said he royally screwed it up. He said he wished he could have done it over. He said many times he asked her to marry him and she said no because it was bad timing, and then many times she asked him to marry her and it was bad timing, so he said no. But he said, yeah, that's the one that got away. And Sally actually said she didn't fault Burt. She said she grew up in a household where the only way she could get love was just to be seen and kind of smile and not have a personality. And as she grew up, that was the personality she would take to be loved in relationships. And so she said Burt wanted a woman with a personality and someone that just, you know, was fitting of that kind of a movie star. And she said, I just wasn't that person then, because the only way I knew how to be loved was to not be me. So it's sad that he said he had 3 major regrets in his life, and one of them was not getting to be with Sally. He said also one of them was the terms of endearment, and one of them was the time away from his son. You know, he married Lonnie Anderson. He was tied into many starlets. I mean, Dinah Shore, Farrah Fawcett, Sally Field, and of course Lonnie Anderson, who he married. And they couldn't have a child, so they adopted a child. And apparently what happened was that Burt was making a movie called City Heat with his pal Clint Eastwood, and they were doing a scene where Burt was supposed to get smashed over the head with a chair, and it was supposed to be a prop chair that fell apart very easily. But sadly someone switched chairs, and it was a metal chair that hit Burt and really hurt him. It broke his jaw, but he didn't want to stop filming. He didn't want to put the production on hold, so he said he just muscled through it. And because of that, he was in excruciating pain. He said his performance was terrible. He was saddened that he did that to Clint Eastwood. He said, I ruined the picture, I feel like, because I shouldn't have done that. I should have known better. And it ended up causing him to have a many-year addiction to pain pills. He said he would literally be in a fetal position without those pain pills. He was on a cocktail of 7 or 8 pills and 50 sleeping pills a day at one point just to take away the pain. And apparently it started to cause a major change in his personality, and he was becoming hard to work with, irritable all the time, and Lonnie filed for divorce, and it got really ugly in the papers. They would accuse each other of many things, and sadly in the end what Burt really wanted was his son Quentin, and that was the one thing that he got visitation. But Lonnie had said that Burt was physically violent, I think throwing things and stuff like that, so they always demanded or at least she did, wanted a chaperone there. But that really hurt Burt because he had a really kind of strained relationship with his father. He said his father, in those days when you were growing up, your dad wasn't an emotional guy. They didn't hug you, they didn't tell you they loved you, and he said, I would have just always killed for that. And it wasn't until the end of his dad's life that he got that from his dad. But he said that was something that, being a good father, his son was his greatest accomplishment. And kind of crazy that the guy in this generation probably is most known for Boogie Nights, and it's a part he didn't want to do. He in fact said he was offended they would even offer it to him, and he didn't want to make the movie because he thought it was glorifying the porn industry, which he thought was maybe one of the worst things you could ever do. And he said that he turned down the part 8 times, and then finally the director came to him, and Burt said, I laid into him and said every reason why I didn't want to do it, and I scolded him for even asking me. And he said when I got done with this pretty violent outburst, he said, he looks at me and he says, if you can put that on camera, you'll get an Oscar nomination. And he did, for Boogie Nights. In fact, when he saw the movie, he said he hated the movie. He liked his performance, but he was just, he had remorse that he had done it. He said, you know, it was exactly what I was against. And then the reviews came in saying it was maybe his best part of all time. And he said even to the end, he didn't like the movie, he didn't like what it stood for, but he did appreciate his performance. And sadly, Burt battled some health issues throughout his life, clogged arteries, and then ended up passing away of a heart attack. He was supposed to be in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood in the part that his pal Bruce Dern would play out at the Spawn Ranch. He was supposed to be Mr. Spawn, and unfortunately he never got to set foot on the set for that movie, but really great movie, and they honored him. I had a friend, Joey Diaz, he was in the Longest Yard remake, and he said, dude, Burt Reynolds was a tough guy. He said, a real tough guy, not just on camera. He said when we were doing the remake, Burt was in the movie and everything. He said we would be out filming drills, and he said he really would hit you like a football player. This guy really had the power, even older in life. Rest in peace, Burt Reynolds. Like I said, they're gonna replace this with a bust around the 3-year anniversary, but this is a temporary marker. What a great actor. You know, one of the great things about his life that I really admire is that in the 90s, when he, you know, had already been a big star and everything, he had money, he didn't have to give back. That's what he decided to do. He decided to open his own acting school and help actors that couldn't afford training. And he did that for many years in Jupiter, Florida. I'm kind of surprised he's not buried in Jupiter, to be honest, but one of the things that he said he always taught his actors was, he said, you should never be acting. If someone can tell you're acting, then you're doing it wrong. You should be behaving. You should always only be behaving. They asked him, what would you want on your headstone when you die? And he said, I want them to know that I lived a hell of a life, and I always went out of my way to not hurt anyone. Rest in peace, Burt Reynolds. Here he is right here beside this tree. One thing I always thought was great about Burt Reynolds was that even though he and Lonnie had that pretty public divorce, for the sake of their son, they were able to get along later in life, and they would have dinners together, and they did move on past that. Like Lonnie said, I did have to realize at one point that it wasn't, you know, for 12 years it wasn't all bad, just at the end. And it really wasn't his fault, it was drugs. And it wasn't that he was a drug abuser, it was the pain and the pain pills. And he said, you know, he said, I still every day lived in pain all the way till the end. But he said it was easier to live with the pain than it was to try and quit doing the pills again. And this isn't too far away either. It says, Judy's Bench, a place for us to come and remember how much you loved us all. Love to you always, your friends. Nice. Kind of curious as to what all they'll do for Burt's final resting place. You could see it was a pretty big plot of land with no one around him right there, so they're gonna do a lot. And we mentioned Tyrone Power. Here's Tyrone Power with some black roses. It's kind of a rarity that Anton Yelchin's parents aren't over here. Usually they're over here sitting in a chair by his grave. And right over here is Chris Cornell. This one seems to change a little bit every time I come here as well. Alright my friends, we're going to call it a day. I want to thank Ada Gladding for becoming my newest Patreon, and thank you all for watching. I know a lot of people have wanted to know where Burt Reynolds was buried, or, you know, whenever anyone passes away, we're always curious, and now that we know it's Hollywood forever, people can go and visit. Thank you all for watching. God rest your soul, Burt Reynolds. Have a great night, and goodbye.